Hello, all. Thank you for joining us here for this Zoom presentation. I'm Ted Morrissey, and among other things, I'm the publisher of 12 Winters Press. As you know, we're here to get a reading and a discussion involving this wonderful book, Trees Grow Lively on Snowy Fields, a anthology of contemporary Chinese poetry. I'm going to just briefly introduce Stephen Haven, and then Stephen will kind of take it from there for further introductions or however they want to kind of proceed. I will encourage everyone to mute themselves during the presentation. I've got some control over that, but if you could see to that yourselves, that would be terrific. We will try to have about a 15-minute or so question and answer session at the end of the program. So about maybe 45 minutes of reading and about 15 minutes of Q&A. Also, as you know, I'm recording, so I will be posting this on my YouTube channel, hopefully in the next couple of days or so. But I really, really appreciate everyone tuning in for this. I'm sure it's going to be a terrific hour that we're going to spend together. Just briefly, I think I've known Stephen since 2015, and the reason I remember that date so well is because we were both at the North American Review Bicentennial Conference. And I think it's at that conference that we started talking about this book, and it took us a while to get it together here, but you maybe will hear more about that as we kind of proceed here. But it could take a long time to read all of Stephen's awards and accolades and publications, but I will mention that for 12 years, Stephen directed MFA in creative writing programs at Ashland and Lesley universities. He is the winner of 2 Fulbright teaching fellowships to universities in Beijing, which obviously is directly related to the book and the program tonight. And then I'll just add that he teaches as professor of literature and creative writing at Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And with that, I will hand it off to Stephen.
Thank you, Ted. I want to begin by saying my litany of thank yous. And I want to begin with Ted Morrissey and 12 Winters Press. Thank you so much for publishing this book at 300 pages and in 2 languages. It was a bear of a project. It took tremendous amount of work on Ted's part, tremendous amount of perseverance. So we thank you, all of us, for everything you've done to bring this project to the public. I want to thank Jin Zhong, my old friend. We started hanging out together in Beijing when we were both young men. Jin Zhong's still a young man, and you can see what's become of me. I want to thank you so much for inviting me to so many parties during that year. We were only together for 1 year, 1990 to 91. But good things happen when genuine friendships reach across cultures. And I'm so thankful that I met you and that you opened the door to this project. And Wang Shouyi, my children do not know that you are Shushu and always will be to them, uncle. They were so young when you used to babysit for them. And I thank you for your friendship, for inviting me to Harbin, China in 1991. And for a friendship that has lasted a lifetime. I will just say that both Jin Zhong and Wang Shouyi are tremendously accomplished poets and translators. Jin Zhong, I believe you are the earliest translator of Duoduo's poetry into English, if I'm right.
Yes.
And Wang Shouyi, you've published so many books, I can't begin to list them. You're the former Dean of Foreign Languages at Heilongjiang University in Harbin, China. And you've lived in Toronto for many years now and have continued to publish not only translations of contemporary Chinese poetry, but classical Chinese poetry, often with the poet John Nofel. So welcome to you both. And what I thought we could do is take turns reading poems, 1 poem maybe each. And we're going to read the poems in Mandarin. Of course, I'm going to need Jin Zhong and Wang Shouyi's help when we come to the poems that I read. And so I thought, Jin Zhong, we could start with you and just choose any poem and anything you want to say about the book or about the poem you're about to read.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me translate a little bit of what you have said to my Chinese friends here. I have quite a few of them now already joining our meeting. So I will translate into Chinese. 大家好啊，刚才呢就是第一个大家看到的呢是这个主持人，他是第12个冬天出版社的主编啊，也是大学教授，他自己也是个作家，他的名叫 Ted Morrissey 啊。第二个大家看到这个呢，就是我们的中国人的老朋友，我管他叫中国人的老朋友 ，our friend, old friend, Chinese friend, Stephen Haven 我是在这个1990年1991年确切说，就是在这个之间，我是认识这个 Stephen Haven 在北京。我当时呢是1989年毕业以后呢，在这个北京呢居住过一段时间。1991年来的这个美国，正好呢，在这个期间呢，我也没有什么事情，在北京呢，我是在这个多多他的寓所里面住。多多已经去了这个荷兰，对，去了已经荷兰。所以说呢，我跟 Stephen Haven 呢，我俩就一起就是翻译这个多多的诗，还有王家欣的诗，还有这个墨菲的诗，还有就是今天呢已经是正月15都过了啊，但是我还是给大家拜一个晚年啊，给中国朋友们拜个晚年。So I was in Beijing in 1991. You know, I graduated from Beijing Foreign Studies in 1989 in June. And then I left the school and I had nothing to do. So I just wandered around and stayed in Beijing in Duoduo's apartment. And then I met this guy, Stephen Haven. And we started, reading and translating Chinese poetry. I think this thing made a big change to him, to his life, maybe to his life. And he, went on, and, during the past 30 years. So he had been working on Chinese poetry translating. OK, 下面呢，我先读一个多多的诗吧。Poem by 多多 I read some of poems by 多多 OK, so this is the book. Page 4 of the book, and 5 in English. I'll read the Chinese first and then the English. OK? Yeah. 多多的诗歌啊，我先读一首这个是，就是是的是啊，是否的是。是黎明在天边糟蹋的一块多好的料子，是黑夜与白昼互相占有的时刻，是曙光在残缺的金属大墙背后露出的残缺的脸。我爱你，我永不收回去。是炉子倾斜，太阳崩溃在山脊，孤独奔向地裂。是风，一个盲人邮差走进地心深处，他绿色的血抹去了一切声音。我信他带走的字，我爱你，我永不收回去。是昔日的歌声，一串瞪着眼睛的铃铛， 是河水的镣铐声打着小鼓，是你的蓝眼睛，两个太阳从天而降。我爱你，我永不收回去。是两把锤子轮流击打，来自同一梦中的火光。是月亮重如一颗子弹，把我们坐过的船压沉。是睫毛膏永恒地粘住。我爱你，我永不收回去。是失去的一切肿胀成河流。是火焰，火焰是另一条河流。火焰永恒的钩子，钩爪全都向上翘起。是火焰的形状碎裂，碎在心形的伸出去而继续燃烧的手指上。是我爱你，我永不收回去。多多1985年。Okay, I'll read the English. Thank you for listening. It is a shock of bright cloth along the horizon, bleached by the rising sun. It is the moment day and night possess each other. It is twilight, a crippled face, revealing itself, breaking the metallic wall of night. I love you, I will never take back. It is a hot tilting stove, the sun collapsing on the ridge. Loneliness rushes towards the abyss. It is the wind, a blind mailman, walks into the earth's depths. Its green blood, the erasure of all voices. My words go with him. I love you, I will never take back. It is the song of the past, a string of small bells, their eyes staring. It is the clank of river shackles beating little drums. It is your eyes, two blue suns descending from the sky. I love you, I will never take back. It is two hammers striking in turn, the coals glowing in the same dream. It is the moon heavy as a bullet, riddling the water and the boat we sat in. It is mascara sticking eternally. I love you, I will never take back. It is the loss of all things swollen to a river. It is fire, the flames forming another river. The eternal hooks claw upward. It is the exact curve of that ignition shattering on star-shaped fingers. Blooming, burning still. It is. I love you, I will never take back. 多多 1985. Thank you. Shall I go on?
Jin Zhong, why don't we go to Wang Shouyi and we'll just keep circling.
Okay,
and we'll come right back to you.
Good, thank you. 谢谢大家 Thank you.
Thank you, Jin Zhong. Wang Shouyi.
Okay, so what I'm going to read are 3 poems from Gu Cheng and 2 poems from Meng Ke. And I worked with Stephen for so many years, and this relationship, friendship, and all based on the love of art, love of poetry. That's the most important thing. And for those poets in China, and I did this translation with Stephen because try to keep my promise. And when I left China in 1996, I got letter from an editor of Poetry Forest, a poetry magazine published in Harbin, Heilongjiang. And but I worked once as an editor of this magazine, and so I knew a woman editor. Her name is Chen Dan-ni. I don't know if she's here or not. She helped me to contact Monke and got all the materials I needed. So that was, so I still owe her great thanks, many thanks. And from that time on, I promised to translate Monke's poems to the English-speaking world. Another poet I'm going to read today is from Gu Cheng. It's also a promise. In 1987, I went to Hong Kong to participate in the Translation Today. It's a conference, it's a symposium. And after that, I delivered a paper and at the assembly. And then I was invited to attend another conference that is titled Literary World Forum, and of writers, poets, critics writing in Chinese. At that meeting, I met Gu Cheng. Certainly, I met a lot of other writers, Chinese writers, many of them you know, such as Bai Hua and Yuan Kejia, Zheng Min. Zheng Min is included in this book. And also some other famous writers like Liu Zhanqiu, the chief editor of Poetry magazine in China, and also Xiao Gang, and so on. And at that meeting, I met Gu Cheng and Xie Ye, Gu Cheng's wife. And the host of the meeting asked me to do him a favor to take Gu Cheng back to the hotel. The meeting was in Sea City, Kowloon, and I need to walk back after the meeting, walk back to Empire Hotel. And they said Gu Cheng could not make it. He must be walking back together with someone. So I took this job, and we had a chance to talk a lot on the way. And during the walk to the hotel, and I talked to him about his poems, and told him I was interested in working on translation. I need to find someone who could work with me. At that time, I didn't find Stephen yet, until that was 1987. Until 1990, Stephen came to visit Heilongjiang University in Harbin. Then I listened to Stephen's reading of his own poems. I immediately felt that I found a poet whose style is good to translate Misty school poems from that year, 1990. Up to now, 32 years. For Gu Cheng, I'm going to read one long poem and two short poems. First, let me read the long one, okay? Or then we do in turns. I finish Gu Cheng, then somebody else can take over. Stephen told me it's good to read a long one from Gu Cheng. So I choose a long one first, not really long, not very long, even shorter than Gu Du's poem we just read. I read the Chinese first, okay? Title 回归 by 顾城。回归，不要睡去，不要，亲爱的，路还很长，不要靠近森林的诱惑，不要失掉希望。请用凉凉的雪水把地址写在手上，或是靠着我的肩膀度过朦胧的晨光。撩开透明的暴风雨，我们就会到达家乡，一片圆形的绿地铺在古塔近旁。我将在那儿守护你疲倦的梦想，赶开一群群黑夜，只留下铜鼓和太阳。在古塔的另一边，有许多细小的海浪，悄悄爬上沙岸，收集着颤动的音响。English translation, the collaboration of Stephen and me. The return. Don't fall asleep. Don't, my love. The road is still long. Don't stop near the lure of the forest. Don't lose hope. Please write with slushy water the address on your lined palm, or lean into my shoulder the whole ambiguous dawn. Wipe away the thundering storm flakes. We will soon arrive at our village. A green circle along stretched out before an ancient pagoda. I will be there to guard your worn desire, drive away flocks of nights only to keep the bronze drum and the sun. On the other side of the pagoda, small waves quietly gather, roll, beach, the hush of their pulsed sound. The two short ones I don't need to read. I remember them, so I just recite it, okay? It's very short. The first one is 一代人, 2 lines. 黑夜给了我黑色的眼睛，我用它去寻找光明。The title is translated into a generation. The dark night gave me black eyes. I used them to search for light. Another one is also a short one. It's called 小巷, Little Lane. 小巷又弯又长，没有门，没有窗。我拿着一把旧的钥匙，敲打着厚厚的墙。English. Little lane. A little lane, twisting and long. No door, no window. I hold an old key, knocking at the thick wall. So these 3 poems were all from Gu Cheng. So please, another one, then I can finish Monk later. Is that okay, Stephen?
Absolutely.
Okay. So it's done for the reading of Gu Cheng, the 3 poems.
Okay, so Jin Zhong, why don't we go back to you and hear more of Duo Duo or Wang Jiaxin or Mo Fei, whatever you'd like to read.
Wang Jiaxin's poem, yeah. Yeah, Wang Jiaxin's poem. Let me see. Not very long, again, not very long. So, The first one I'm going to read is called Iron. 铁 iron. This poem was written in 1991, I believe. The chairman of Poetry International from Netherlands, Martin, he came to Beijing to visit, and by that year, Wang Jiaxin was invited to join the Poetry International. So I translated this poem, for him. So it's really a good one for that year. I'll read the Chinese first. 王家欣的诗啊，铁，沉甸甸的黑，比夜还黑，比一个暴君还要镇定。我看到黑夜中的炼铁厂，火烧红了一个世纪。从库下呼啸而来，铁的力量压倒一切。铁，岩石之父，这是来自男人性格中的某种东西，黑暗而盲目。它在那里，在呈现的言辞与更广大的虚无之间。它是一个否定，但比肯定还要肯定。它是铁，是坚定无言、不可破灭的铁。Iron, heavy, dark, darker than night, cooler than the mind of a tyrant. I see an iron works in the dark, the fire tormenting a whole century. Within near in June, the force of iron overwhelms everything. Iron, the father of rock, it is something from the nature of man, dark and blind. It is there, between the words presented and the greater nothingness. It is a negation, yet it is more affirmative than affirmation. It is iron. It is the indomitable, indisputable, and indestructible iron. I read another one by Wang Jiaxin. Okay. It's called Change, 转变。Chinese first. 转变，季节在一夜间彻底转变。你还没有来得及准备，风已扑面而来。风已冷得使人迈不出院子。你转回身来，天空在风的鼓荡中出奇地发蓝。你一下子就老了，衰竭，面目全非，在落叶的打旋中步履艰难。仅仅一个狂风之夜，身体里的牧童已是那样的空，一走动就晃荡出声音，而风仍不息地从这个季节穿过。风鼓动着白云，风使天空更高更远。风一刻不停地运送着什么，风在瓦缝里，在听不见的任何地方吹着，那样的急迫。剩下的日子已经不多了，落叶纷飞，风中的树声，从远处溅起的人声、车辆声， 都朝着一个方向，如此逼人。风已彻底吹进了你的骨头缝里。仅仅1个晚上，一切全变了。这不仅使你暗自惊心，把自己稳住，是到了在风中坚持或彻底放弃的时候了。Change. The season has completely changed overnight. Before you have time to protect yourself, the wind sears your face. The wind is so cold you can't walk out of your yard. You turn back. The sky, swept by the wind, reveals its extraordinary hue. You suddenly go septuagenarian, exhausted, distorted beyond recognition. You walk with difficulty in whirlpools of falling leaves. After just one night of violent wind, the wooden bucket in your body empties. If you move, you will hear it rocking. The wind-pierced, cloud-swept season heightens the remote sky, constantly transporting something. The wind presses the chinks between the tiles into cries, presses into places you cannot hear. The days still remaining unnumbered, the dead leaves scattering about. The sound of trees in the wind, the sound of people and their stirred vehicles in the distance. Everything heading in the same direction. Hurry up! The wind blown completely into your joints. Just one night, everything has changed. It suddenly sobers you up. It is time to keep going in the wind or to give up everything. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Jin Zhong. We have an unusual combination of poets in this collection in that we have a mother and a daughter, Zhongmin and Tongwei.
Yes.
And Zhongmin is now, how old is she? 103 years old, would you say? Is she that old? I don't know exactly, but you would know, Wang Shouyi.
Unfortunately, she passed away.
Oh, did she pass away?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she might be the one unifying person in this collection. I never met Zhongmin. She was emeritus professor at Beijing Normal University, where I taught in my second year in Beijing. But I know she's close friends with Jin Zhong and with Wang Shouyi, and also with Li Yongyi, who is our third collaborative translator who couldn't be with us tonight. He was a student at Beijing Normal University and close friends also. I think Zhongmin was a mentor to him and maybe to you, Jin Zhong. I don't know. I know you were close friends. So I'd like to read a poem by Zhongmin, and I'm going to ask Jin Zhong to read the Mandarin for the Zhongmin poem and Wang Shouyi to read the Mandarin for the Tongwei poem. So let's start with Zhongmin, and it is the poem on 241, Longing a Lion. Jin Zhong, would you start with the Mandarin?
Oh, you mean the Chinese first?
You read the
Okay.
Chinese first.
OK，大家好啊，我现在读这个郑明老师的一首诗啊，郑敏呢是我的导师啊，我在北京外国语大学，但是呢，郑敏是我的这个论文导师，我毕业答辩呢也是郑明老师是主持的，Professor 郑敏 was also my professor when I was working on my graduation paper on Anne Sexton, so she was my teacher too. Okay, now I read the Chinese. 渴望一只雄狮，在我的身体里有一张张得很大的嘴，它像一只在吼叫的雄狮。它冲到大江的桥头，看着桥下的湍流，那静静划过桥洞的轮船。它听见时代在吼叫，好像森林里象的吼叫。他回头看着我，又走回我身体的笼子里。那狮子的金毛像日光，那象的吼叫像捕鸣。开花样的活力回到我的体内。狮子带我去街头，带我去桥头，那里我去赴一个约会。Thank you. Back to you.
Longing a Lion by Yongyi. Inside my body there is a gaping mouth, a lion roaring, rushing to the end of the bridge as a ship glides by. Looking down at the river's rush, it hears the clamor of the times, like an elephant's trumpet in the forest, throws a backward glance at me into the cage of my body. The lion's golden hair dazzles like the sun, the call of the elephant's drum. This charge blooms in me, lures me to the bridge's edge. Zhongmin is the only poet in this collection who was writing prior to the Misty School. This book really begins with the Misty School and then goes on to some younger poets, in quotes, younger poets being poets younger than 60, I guess, who are of the next generations after the Misty School. But Zhongmin was writing prior, for a long time, prior to the 70s. And her daughter Tong Wei began to publish books of poetry in the 80s. And I'll just read one of those poems. It's always interesting. I don't know either of these poets work well enough to understand the extent to which the mother might have influenced the daughter. But it's always interesting. We have James Wright and Franz Wright, a father-son poet team in the United States, to read the child's work and understand how they, came out from beyond the parents' influence. And often the parents' influence is still somewhere there apparent as well. But Tong Wei develops a very different, distinctive style. This is a translation, collaborative translation with Li Yongyi, as was the last poem by Zhongmin. This poem is Wang Shouyi, it's on 179, and it's called Little Puppet. And again, the poet's name is Tong Wei. We'll start with the Mandarin.
Okay, thank you. As Stephen said, I'm a friend of Zhongmin, but I never met Tong Wei, Zhongmin's daughter. And when we were in Hong Kong, participated the Translation Today and Literary World Forum, both Zhongmin and me and also Yuan Kejia, we three attended these two conferences. And in between, one night, actually early in the morning at 1:30, Zhang Xianghua, a woman poet from Taiwan, who is the wife of Bai Yang, a famous writer in Taiwan, and she called us saying she was going to invite Zheng Min, me, and Yuan Kejia to coffee. So I remember at that time, Zheng Min made a very poetic comment. This is not the nightlife in Hong Kong. All right, but I never met her daughter, but I'm glad to read this Chinese version of her daughter's poem for Stephen. 小木偶，谁深入他，五指操纵他的心灵。他刚要述说，孤儿般漂泊的身影，停息在花朵的之间。深入天空的树木，顶着鹿角鸡翅，天空的镜子碎了。手像树上的毛虫掉进草地，它摇曳月光的绳子，黑色的小心脏奔向月亮，在银匣子里震响。我在缝，在他早已摔破的哭泣中缝时间的面具，在他笑意盎然的颧骨上，我把伤口移植到早晨的镜里。小木偶，小木偶，长着不再惊呼的嘴，光的睫毛从灰暗的肩膀一圈圈剥落，一双手交叉重叠，滑入我古文消失的头颅，已缝合成非人的器官。Thanks, Stephen. Back to you.
Shouyi. Thank you. I'll just share a brief Tongwei story. I've never met Tongwei either, but one day a few years ago, I was sitting in my Leslie office on the Brattle campus, and there was a knock on the door, and it was Tongwei's niece. And I believe Jin Zhong, I think you know, I think her niece was a student at Harvard. I'm not remembering what university her niece was attending in Boston, but she stopped by to say hello, and we went out for coffee. This book hadn't been published yet, so that's as close as I've come to meeting Tongwei. This poem is called Little Puppet. Whose penetrating fingers manipulate her little heart? She speaks of an orphaned homunculus perched on the tip of a flower. Trees stretching into the sky race past, crowned with antlers, the blue mirror breaks. Hands like caterpillars from trees dangling down to the grass. She pulls at the string of light, that little black heart craving for the moon, rattling in the silver box. I'm sewing in her broken sobs, sewing a mask of time onto her smiling cheekbones. I'm transplanting the wound into the mirror of morning. Little puppet, your mouth no longer cries for surprise. Eyelashes of light peel off your gloomy shoulders, your crossed, overlapped hands sliding into my seamless skull, sewn into an inhuman thing.
Stephen, I notice we're about 6:45. Would you like to maybe do just a few more minutes of reading and then turn to some questions? We've had a few questions pop up in the chat, so I know if people have some questions out there. I'll leave it up to you if you want to do a few more poems or if you'd like to turn to the Q&A now, whatever you would like to do.
Why don't we, Shouyi and Jin Zhong, why don't you read one more short one, and then we'll go to questions that you will be able to answer better than I.
Okay, let me finish Monke anyway, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I selected two poems from Monke. One is a little bit long, one is a little bit short. So as time is pressing, so I choose the short one, Okay. The
Okay.
long one, why did I choose the long one? The long one is after one night. It is very rare to find a poem about love in the Misty school. And this one was written by Monk, but it's long. I selected that day. It was, it is good for Valentine. So Valentine is over, so I don't read that one. Okay, now I'm gonna let you read this one. This one is spring, short one. Okay, Monk must be read in this session because he is the founder of the magazine Today, which published a lot of first group, second group, third group of Misty School poets works. Very, very important. He founded that magazine together with Bei Dao. And these two guys, great contribution to the development and the survival of Misty School poetry. Okay, so let me read this one, spring. It is spring now. In Toronto today, it's 8 degrees Celsius, above zero. That's pretty warm. Spring, 太阳把它的血液输给了垂尾的大地，它使大地的躯体里开始流动阳光，也使那些死者的骨头长出绿色的枝叶。你听见了吗？那些从死者骨头里伸出的枝叶，再把花的酒杯碰得叮当响。这是春天。English, spring. To the comatose earth, the sun gives its blood. Sunshine floats in the body of the soil. From the bones of the dead, green branches grow. From the branches, glass-like flowers listen. Have you heard the clink of that raised wine? This is spring. Thank you.
Jin Zhong, would you read one more short one, and then we'll go to questions?
Okay, see which one. Okay, let me. Let me read another one by Wang Jiaxin, a short one. Yeah. Train station, 火车站。王嘉欣。火车站。车站，这废弃的、被出让给空旷的，仍留着一缕火车远去的气息。车轮移动，铁轨渐渐生锈。但是死亡曾在这里碰撞，生命太渴望了，以至于一列车厢与另一列之间在呼喊一场剧烈的枪战。这就如同一个时代，动词们相聚开走，它卸下的名词一堆堆生锈，而形容词是在铁轨间疯长的野草。Train station. This station, abandoned, given up to emptiness, still possesses some slight sounds of the departing train. The wheels moved away, the rails rusted slowly. Death collided here. Life was so thirsty that each car challenged the others fiercely to a constant gunfire. One after the other, the verbs of this era vanished. The nouns were unloaded from it, heap after rusty heap, and the adjectives, weeds along the rails, rampantly growing. 谢谢大家 Thank you.
Ted, I'm just noticing now that it looks like Lan is in the audience, and I just want to honor her presence if she is here. And maybe Jin Zhong, you could welcome her if that is in fact Lan.
I don't know if
I'm seeing her name.
Lan. Yeah, Lan is here. Yes.
So I'm wondering, just very briefly, to honor Lan's presence, we might read one poem by her and then go to questions. Lan's a wonderful poet with maybe a dozen books published in China. She lives in Beijing.
Yes.
And so just one poem. I don't want to have her here in the audience and not read a poem by her. And I'm wondering, Jin Zhong, would you read in Chinese the poem, or ask Lan to read it on page 61 of the book, The World with You?
I see Wang Jiaxin is here.
Yes.
And Wang Jiaxin, welcome, Wang Jiaxin. Oh, I didn't. Ni hao, Wang Jiaxin. We had dinner in 2011 in Beijing, but not since then. So, Jin Zhong, would you give that poem a reading? I'm not sure whether Lan, she won't understand my English, but do you want page 61?
Page 61.
The World with You. It's page 60, the Mandarin version.
Okay, let me see. Stephen Heaven 说你能不能读一首诗？但是呢，我估计你手里面没有这本书啊，所以说呢，我还是替你读吧。在有你的世界上。I think she doesn't have the book or the poem,
Okay.
so I will read it for her.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. The world with you, Chinese. 在有你的世界上，懒做。在有你的世界上活得多好，在散发着你芦苇香气的大地上呼吸多好。你了解我，阳光流到你的唇旁。当我抬手搭衣服时，我想，神秘的风忽然来了，你需要我。我看到你微笑时，我正对着镜子梳妆。夜晚，散开的树叶和人间的下落，一朵云走开。我抬头望着，在有你的世界上生活多好。下雪的黄昏里，我默默盯照红红的烛火。Thank you.
In the English version, Lan's poem, The World with You. So good to live in a world with you. Breathe in your fields the sweetness of your reed. You know me. Sunlight flows to your lips when I hang the wash. A mystic wind waiting in the wings. You need me. Doing my hair, you smile in the mirror. Night falls, open books, lost worlds, a passing cloud. I look up. So good to live in the world with you. on snowy dusks, my gaze, the orange fire, silence. Thank you, everybody. And Ted, we turn it back to you to monitor the questions.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we've had a couple of already. I'll just try to kind of compress them a little bit. One question, they're kind of related. Why in the book so much emphasis on the Misty poets? And then along those lines, what were some of the strategies in dealing with the Misty poets imagery when translating from Mandarin to English?
Is this a question for me?
Yes,
No,
please.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, okay. So I think this book, it's an anthology of poems in contemporary China. But as a matter of fact, a large number of poets we selected, they belong to Misty School. And certainly there are a few poets not really from this, belong to this school, and but they are contemporary Chinese poets. And their poems are pretty new and pretty fresh and pretty at the edge. But why we didn't plan to select so many Misty School poets? At least I didn't discuss this with Stephen as a plan. But the poets we selected were mostly from this school. For me, I selected Gu Cheng and Mang Ke. Both are important figures in this Misty School. Why? Because Misty School, their style, their writing is cutting edge. After Cultural Revolution and the Chinese, in China, everything needs to do something new to show the ability and the possibility to make things better. So facing this kind of a situation, some poets, old poets, they choose to go back to the old tradition. But some poets, young poets, they choose to do something new. And under the influence of the experiences in the Cultural Revolution, and also they are sent down generation, you know, they were all from countryside mostly. So their personal experiences and the social situation, everything gave them the chance to do something new. So they particularly with their own style. The poets we selected in this book, most of them are the style incarnations. They are very typical. So the Misty School, at the very beginning, they were under attack and very controversial and under, you know, under a lot of pressure, and some people denounce it, and some people just criticize it openly. And so there are two books. I owe many thanks to these two books for me to do the translation of Misty School. One is this, Misty School, Anthology of Misty School Poems. And this book was published early in 1982, selected, all the poems selected by 4 students from Chinese department in Liaoning University. They were supported back up by their teachers, professors, and they did it. And that was the first book and published. And then they add more books, more poems into this book. This book was published by finally in 1985, 3 years later, published by Spring Wind Literary Press in Shenyang, Liaoning Province. And these 4 students' name, I think I'd better read the names for you, is Yan Yuejun, Gao Yan, Liang Yun, Gu Fang, 4 students. They have guts. They have guts. They did it. And then this book was printed 8 times by 1994. And this book was published in 1985 in November. Just 3 or 4 months later, another book published, 探索诗集, Anthology of Exploring Poems. And this was published by Shanghai Literary Press. And all these books got 2 prefaces. One is written by Gong Liu, a very famous traditional poet at that time. And another one preface was written by Shao Yanxiang, also a very famous poet. And both of these 2 people were suffering a great deal in those political movements, political activities, political policies, political pressures. So, but they don't want to give full support to Misty School poetry. They wrote in a way very conservative. They selected Gu Ting, Gu Cheng, Shu Ting, and Beidao, but the prefaces, they were very conservative. They to the most they think this is a try, just a try. And I think the implication was that they think they were going to fail, but they didn't. So
Shouyi, can I just share that we have 3 Misty school poets in this collection, Duoduo, Mengke, and Gucheng. And it's true that there's a wider selection from their work. But the book came into being in 3 waves. The first working with Jin Zhong, 1990-91, I met Wang Shouyi. Wang Shouyi's with us right now. At the same moment I met Jin Zhong, I met Wang Shouyi at the same party. I believe Jin Zhong, you and Sichuan were the only people who spoke English at that party. So we began to hang out, and that was the first wave. Then I met Wang Shouyi, and we had the fortune of spending a year together when Wang Shouyi was on the Fulbright program. So that was the second wave of these translations, and we focused on Gucheng and Mengke exclusively that year. So we ended up doing a lot more of those translations. But then with Li Yongyi, he's a younger poet, and we owe him many thanks. This book would not be here today without Li Yongyi. He couldn't be with us tonight. Li Yongyi is probably 40 years old. I think he's the youngest among us and much more aware of the younger generation. So we worked on some younger poets together when I visited his university in Chongqing in 2011. So there's a randomness in the selection in this book. But Jin Zhong, maybe you could say a few words about the importance of Duoduo to contemporary Chinese poetry.
Yes. Duoduo was like, I was in Beijing Foreign Studies University. I was, a student. So Duoduo was a journalist working for the Farmers Daily. And we met each other, and then we liked each other. and I love his poems so good. I love his poems so good. The so-called Misty poetry, the word Misty, it comes from Chinese, means 朦胧. 朦胧means not clear. So this is actually a name, given by some people who are, they don't understand the poetry. So they say, oh, this is a misty, this is not clear. So the original meaning of this, and then, but when it comes to the Western countries, they call it misty. It's pretty poetic. It's like mountains, shielded with clouds or whatever, misty, pretty oriental too. They don't understand it because this is a kind of new way of writing. There are two things I should mention. One is why it's not clear. Why it's not clear? I think this is one because of the political reasons. There are things that you cannot express, openly, freely, directly. So you have to hide what you really want to say into your sentences, into your writing. For example, Dodo has wrote something back in 1975 or 6, during the Cultural Revolution. It's one line. He said, the history is watching, the gray house is collapsing. What does it mean? It's very, very political, but you really cannot say anything. He said the gray house is collapsing. I didn't say anything else. So this is a way of writing. 北岛、顾城、多多, all of them, Monk, they all write like this. So there are many things inside, they have to hide. This is kind of like, the Soviet Union, when you say something against Stalin, they will kill you. Something like this, when you say Stalin, you have to say, Ula, Ula, that means long live Stalin. But if you want to say something bad against Stalin, you can say Hitler is a beast. Hitler is fine, right? In Soviet Union, so that's what's happening. During the Cultural Revolution, things were really, really bad. You really could get killed, shot instantly if you say something against the leader. That was what was happening. This is one thing. The second thing is, China opened up suddenly after the Cultural Revolution. So people saw the Western countries, the culture, the poems, pouring into China from America, from Western countries, England, whatever. So people, they started to think about the definition of poetry, again, how we should write this thing. So that was the history of the so-called Misty poems. Now I will say something briefly in Chinese so my friends can understand what I'm saying. 刚才我说的大概的意思就是什么呢？就是这个朦胧诗啊，朦胧诗当时的这个出现呢，这个名字呢是一个朦胧，咱们知道汉语是什么意思，它就是不清楚的意思。但是到了这个英文呢，他们管它叫 misty。misty 是什么呢？就是朦朦胧胧，那个指的就是说在雾里面，一个山在这个云彩的后边啊，是这个意思。那么朦胧诗的出现呢，它里主要是有两个就是特征。第一个特征是什么呢？就是你要知道，你比如说在这个前苏联哈，你要是写斯大林的话呢，你必须说好东西。你要是说斯大林是个畜生，对吧？那你就会被枪毙掉。但是呢，你说 Hitler 是个畜生，这个就没有问题了。你说斯大林的时候，你必须说万岁，说乌拉，对吧？就是这个意思。再一个就是朦胧诗的出现呢，是因为的的确确是受这个西方诗歌的影响，大家读了很多，就是突然一下子涌进了很多美国的诗歌也好啊，你比如说当时自白派的诗歌涌进来啊，还有什么什么的，所以说呢，大家呢就是吸收了很多新鲜的东西。OK, that's it. Back to you.
We have one question that came up very early, and I'd like to try to see if we can squeeze in some kind of response. But the question has to do with the relationship between the Misty School of Poets and the Black Mountain Poets, which seem very similar to at least one of our audience participants here. So if someone could speak to the connection between the Misty poets and the Black Mountain poets.
I can't really speak on the Black Mountain poets. My guess is, I don't know, Wang Shouyi, are you familiar with the Black Mountain School in the US? With, you know, Robert Duncan and, you know, the poets who were on the West Coast, and they were on the faculty at Black Mountain College when Charles Olson was the president of that school just for a few years. I would recognize maybe a complex surface to the poems, but beyond that, I really can't say much about that connection. I don't know whether Jin Zhong or Wang Shouyi are familiar with the Black Mountain poets in the US.
No, I'm not really into this, no.
Okay, so yeah, Shouyi, do you have
I
any?
think the characteristics of Black Mountain poems, they use a lot of images. So imagism rose up in the early 20th century in United States. And even from Ezra Pound and you know, those poets, they said they learned about this from Chinese classical poems, because in Chinese classical poems, there are lots of images. They use images. They think images are stronger than any other words. So this influenced the American New Poetry movement in the early 20th century. Then it comes back to influence Chinese New Poetry in 1930s. During that period of time, it was the New Poetry movement. But the New Poetry movement was disturbed by a lot of political movements, political activities, and particularly Cultural Revolution. After Cultural Revolution, and then I think Misty School poets resumed this tradition to use images. So the images make the poems hard to crack, but it is full of implications. The implications made the poems complex. So the complexity is a great attraction to readers. And also why Misty School poems attracted so many people, like in America, the New Poetry movement in early 20th century at that time, because it attracted readers. The old form, the old tradition, and cannot meet the requirement of the poetry writing situation, and they die. And the new style, a bunch of incarnations and rose up, and they attract the readers. Why? Because the images they used in their poems make the poems very complex, give the poems a lot of complexity, and then readers was attracted to participate in the recreating of the poem. And when readers can appreciate it, to explore the implications, to find out the inside world of human beings, and then they are happy, and the poets should be happy too, because this poem is completed by now. So that's why I think.
That's a really interesting connection, that they're more powerfully imagistically driven poems. There was a comment by David Weinstein, who I just met at a talk I gave at the Quincy Library, which I think is also true, that Ezra Pound, who's so crucially important, I think, in China, or my sense when I was in China, that Pound is more highly esteemed even than Eliot in China. And of course, the Olson was deeply influenced. Charles Olson, I forgot his title, the chancellor, I think he was, of the Black Mountain School, deeply influenced by Pound. And Olson influences the Black Mountain School, and also is an influence on the Misty School. And both those schools are anti-establishment. Black Mountain School was pushing against the maybe the more academic established poetry that was being published by publishing houses in New York. It was maybe more of an underground movement in the way the Misty School was too. But Ezra, David, that's a very interesting comment. Ezra Pound would have, and maybe Jin Zhong, you could share a few words about Ezra Pound. How was he? I remember seeing his photo, I believe, on the wall at the first party I attended. I don't know whose apartment we were in, but there was Ezra Pound's photo on the wall. Why is Ezra Pound important to the Misty School?
I think not really. They just like, big writers like Ezra Pound, T.S. Eliot, these big writers. And, it's very hard to get a photo or a portrait. It's very hard. If you have something we like to put it on the wall, I think that's the main reason. That's the main reason. Like, Duoduo said, he was at the very beginning of his writing career, he was influenced by the Russian poets. Because he lives in Beijing, and in his home, when he was a child, there were books from the Soviet Union, so he could read the literature from there. And then, like in the 1980s, when we had the translations of like Anne Sexton, Sylvia Plath, he was really drawn into it. He loves Sylvia Plath, and I gave him a copy of Sylvia Plath, and he put it on the wall also. So yeah, but Ezra Pound, his images, the images he's using, we like that, of the trees, the people, or whatever, we like that. Okay.
So you're like what Shouyi is saying, that image-driven poem, wouldn't that be true of classical Chinese poetry? Shouyi, maybe were the Misty School poets even more forcefully working through the image than, say, classical Chinese poets or earlier 20th century poets?
I don't think the Misty School poets really did go back to the classical poems to absorb their, images in those poems. And they were actually influenced by Western poetry, like from United States, from Britain, from many different countries. And in China, even before Cultural Revolution, they published a lot of books circulated within a small group of people who has high ranks or high titles or whatever. And one kind of books is called free cover books. Those are about economics, politics, and history, so on. Another group of books, they call it yellow cover books. These are about arts, poetry, novels, plays, and so on and so forth. Those books, they publish it not for all the people to read, because they were scared. And they were scared for what? For people might be influenced badly by those artistic works. So they circulate among a certain group of people. But when Cultural Revolution started, and they burned a lot of books, and they searched for all those things and to burn. But before books were burned, a lot of books were taken away by those book lovers. So I think Misty School boys at that time, they were young, they were a teenager, and they did get these kind of books, and before they couldn't reach, they couldn't get it, and but after the Cultural Revolution, they could access to those books. They were influenced by those books. Those books, including a lot of very, very new cutting edge artistic works. So I think that is the thing. For Ezra Pound was influenced by classical Chinese poems, and it turned over to China to influence Chinese new poetry movement in 1930s. But that I mentioned just now, that new poetry movement in China was disturbed, was actually got no way to develop because it was disturbed by, a series of political issues, particularly Cultural Revolution. When Cultural Revolution was over, so those people, those established poets, they were scared. They were scared. They can only find a way to go back to the poetry writing before Cultural Revolution under restrictions of all the political ideas. But the young group, like Misty School poets and some other groups of young poets, they are bold, they are brave, they have guts, so they learned, they absorb all those things, new things from abroad, and then develop their own style, they establish their own style. So they are the style incarnations and in the history of Chinese contemporary poetry.
Thank you, Shouyi.
I think maybe we should bring things to a close here, Stephen. Is that your sense as well, or?
Yeah, sounds good, Ted. Thank you so much for hosting us.
Well, I just want to say thank you. It was fascinating. And I also want to say congratulations, since we actually are kind of together for the first time in all these years working on this project. It's hard when a book comes out during the height or the abyss of a global pandemic, but your book is slowly but surely getting the praise that it deserves. It's a wonderful reviews, and I have no doubt some other sort of accolades are on your way or on their way. And I'll be in Albuquerque next week promoting your book as well. So I look forward to sharing it with a new audience in the desert there. So again, just congratulations and thank you so much for this book and for letting me publish it and for this evening, which was wonderful.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you, Shouyi, and thank you, Jin Zhong, so much. And I hope to see you here in Boston, both of you, very soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
I
everyone.
noticed
for attending.
Melissa Morrissey there. Melissa Morrissey. Who is she?
She is my partner in everything. That is my wife, Melissa. She's in the other room, just down the hall.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.